With the ending of the Culling Games drawing near, how many arcs do you think JJK has left for its conclusion before Gege decides it's enough? Would a Heian arc flashback be one of them? So I think if Gege sticks to the plan of ending the series within this year, then I think we most likely have at least one final arc left. And I would say the Culling Games are due to end within the next couple of chapters, and that is a personal prediction for myself here. As we already know that Konjaku, as mentioned, he wants to end the Culling Games, but he wanted to watch Sukuna take a bath before ending the Culling Games. And as I'm saying that sentence out loud, I have to take a pause because that sounded sussy as fuck. But you know what else is also sussy as fuck? Watching this video and not being subscribed, and you should definitely fix that, because I hear subscribing to this channel gives a 120% increase in PP size. Anyway, I think if Kenjaku does end the Culling Games and we go into our final arc here, I do think that Gege should do a Heian Era flashback before that happens, because right now we have the genuine perfect opportunity happening right before us, which is Sukuna VS Yorozu fighting, and these two have obviously already have a past and already even have some sort of weird little romance thing going on, which is a whole other issue to deal with. But having these two fighting right now would lead into the perfect segue to explore and deepen our knowledge of the Heian Era, allowing us to learn more about Sukuna and maybe even Yuji and Konjaku to really nail home the stakes for what we're reading right now before the final arc starts. It's also entirely possible that Gege doesn't even give us anything Heian Era related and just leaves it as a complete and utter mystery with the story, and the Heian Era just becomes the Yoda of Jujutsu Kaisen, where it's like a super interesting character and lore and backstory and a topic, but we only ever just get hints and nothing is actually ever explored in depth about it. And he's just intentionally leaving it as a mystery and wants to focus on the modern era of sorcery. What do you think happens if Yuji found other Sukuna fingers and ate it? Would he get Sukuna's CT, or would Sukuna transfer back to Yuji, or something else entirely? So I theorized in a previous video about what happens with Yuji's possible chaos technique and how that basically just comes into fruition. And we know him eating Sukuna's fingers in the first place unlocked his ability to basically use chaos energy, and Gojo did say at one point that Yuji would eventually be able to access Sukuna's technique. So first thing that we can possibly rule out here is Sukuna transferring back into Yuji if Yuji was to digest the remaining fingers. And one of the reasons I say this is because early on in the series, when Yuji had already eaten multiple fingers of Sukuna and a special grade chaos spirit was born and had consumed one of Sukuna's fingers, Sukuna didn't manifest in that cursed spirit. So I think we can rule that possibility out of basically Sukuna switching back from Megumi to Yuji. I think Sukuna may be able to control the consciousness of where he flows with his cursed energy. Not entirely sure on the whole specifics of that one. But as for Yuji finding the other fingers and consuming them, I think that is the possibility for Yuji to produce a cursed technique. With Sukuna having left Yuji's body now, it's possible Sukuna's technique was always available to Yuji. However, Sukuna was not allowing Yuji to access it for obvious reasons, just to basically be a pain in the ass for Yuji. This would also be similar to what Megumi was doing to Sukuna in his fight with Yuji. Sukuna had his cursed energy suppressed by Megumi from the inside out, and I don't think it would be crazy to say that Sukuna would also be able to do something similar to this and be able to suppress a potential technique that might have engraved on Yuji's body after consuming the finger. And also he could also be potentially subduing Yuji's cursed energy, which is why we saw when Sukuna had left Yuji's body and the two started fighting, Sukuna was shocked by all of a sudden Yuji's sudden growth, and that could be a factor of it. However, now Sukuna has left Yuji's body. If Yuji was to consume the final fingers, I do think it would act as basically a catalyst to allow Yuji to unlock Sukuna's technique that had basically just been engraved into Yuji's body due to the time as Sukuna's vessel, basically. And that's the prevailing theory here from me. But then that does just leave the question of how would Yuji happen to even come into contact with the final fingers, which is the theory I would pose to you guys in the comments down below. How do you think Yuji's going to come to these final fingers, and what happens when he does consume them, if he does consume them? Who do you predict will die by the end of the series, and do you think this will be a series where the villains end up winning in the end? So I've said this before, and I genuinely think a lot of characters are not making it to the end of the series before it comes to a close. One thing that always sticks in my mind is Gege saying about how out of Gojo and the first year students, either one will die and all the rest will survive, or a lot of them will die and only one will survive. And I think in the previous previous case, I think the one that will survive will be Gojo. I think Gojo will be free, but it'll be a similar situation to Shibuya. Gojo is present and fighting. However, he isn't able to save pretty much anyone and will end up defeating the villains, but his victory will be ultimately meaningless because he was unable to save anybody. And again, I've said it before, I really like the ending as Gojo being the last man standing, the strongest, but also unable to save anyone, this tragic hero. And yeah, a lot of people have argued that Gojo is not the main character, which is fair. I understand that. That's fine. But some of these series sometimes don't go in the way that you want them to go. And I personally, if I was writing the series, you can call me the worst writer on the planet, but me personally, if I was writing the series, I think it would be a very fitting end to have Gojo close out the series, as he was basically one of the first people that we saw introduce himself to Yuji at the beginning of the series. So to answer that question in a summarized way, I think Gojo will defeat the villains, but the villains will complete their goal and winning in a roundabout way, basically. So yeah, I do think it will be a series where the villains do end up winning by the end, and that has been the case narratively so far. How do you think Yuji is going to get affected by this series of current events, and can we expect a dark version of Yuji? Honestly, yeah. In the same way Maki has become this colder, more calculating version of herself due to the events of the Zenin slaughter, I think we can definitely already see the beginning of Yuji's Sith era here. To give it a name, we only need to look at Yuji's fight with Sukuna before and during when Maki showed up. The look in Yuji's eyes as he's walking towards Sukuna was intense, and it was filled with rage after what Sukuna has just done and put him through, and even what he's just done to Megumi. And we've seen hints of Yuji starting to crack, similar to how Gon was and went in Hunter x Hunter. Yuji has shown us time and time again, he lets his rage consume him and lets his emotions get the better of him. Yuji vs Mahito was a prime example of this. And then there's Yuji's self-sacrificial nature and cog mentality throughout the series, and that is even more proof that Yuji is ready to pop, emotionally speaking. So yeah, to answer that question, I think we will see a darker version of Yuji at least, or at least a slightly more evil and more ruthless version of Yuji when we do come back around to him. What do you think will happen to Konjaku by the end of the series? Honestly, I've had a few thoughts about this, and even though Yuta has already stated that he will be the one to kill Kenjaku, I've had a few thoughts about it, and I don't think Yuta has the correct motivations to beat out Konjaku, basically. While Yuta, yes, has had a past with Geto, and that is a separate man to Konjaku. However, Yuta probably still sees Geto and his body, basically. I don't think that is a proper motivation to have Yuta fighting Konjaku. Yuji, on the other hand, is a very, very perfect person to take out Konjaku, in my opinion. While at first thought Yuji should be the one to fight Sukuna because of the suffering that Sukuna has caused Yuji, I think that when Yuji eventually learns who is the true mastermind behind his birth and pretty much everything that has happened to him since that point, I think that's when we'll get to see that dark, aforementioned version of Yuji that we just talked about from the previous question. And then there's also a possible theory that Konjaku was wiped out by his own creation. Konjaku creates this massive cursed spirit, and he creates the chaos that he is desperately wanting to create, that chaos that he can't control. And Konjaku himself has openly said he does just want to create chaos that he can't control. So imagine he creates this massive cursed spirit, and the first thing that it does is wipe him out. I genuinely think that it would be ironic and kind of fitting for Konjaku to create something so monstrous that it just wiped him off the face of the planet the minute it laid eyes on him. Anyway, that is everything for this member video. I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has supported me lately, members and people that just watch. Genuinely, truly, it does mean a lot to me. Like, the past couple of weeks have been very, very rough for me in my personal life, and for reasons a lot of you probably do know. So to have a community like you guys who are willing to invest so much of their time and so much of themselves into the stuff that I do, really, I can't express how grateful and how thankful I am for that from the bottom of my heart. I am blessed, and I hope to continue doing videos for all you guys. So anyway, that is everything from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will catch you guys all in the next one. Much love, big kisses, peace.